think how should a good design actually start, and how would you actually like if I have a problem that I wanted to solve, where do I start? Is there a process or is there a framework that you follow when it comes to designing a problem or a solution to the problem itself? Rachel, would
maybe?
you? Yeah.
Because I started first
Yeah,
for
sure.
this question.
Cool. So you're saying, like, is there a process or a framework that we usually start with, right?
Yep, correct.
Yeah, I think for me personally, I don't really have like a rigid fixed process for everything. There's also no perfect process for design. It feels like maybe what I would go with is when I'm trying to design something, it depends on the problem that we're trying to solve, right? And once we actually nail down the problem, it actually starts by basically understanding if this is the right problem and understanding what is the pain points that the users are actually facing. And actually, once you have defined the problem, that means that you know that you are actually solving something that is on the right path, right? And once you've done that already, it means that you could start designing the solution for it. So the solutioning part is actually the easiest part, if you ask me, because you already have done the empathy session with the users. You already know what problem you're trying to solve. And that's when you come to a point where I know what I'm doing. And it's just a matter of finding the best, the most simple solution, the beautiful solution that delights the users. And I guess once you have the solution done, the next process is basically to validate the solution so that you know what you're designing actually people understand. People don't have to think hard when they're using it in terms of the design, right? And that's where we come to the validation part, which means user testing, understanding, validating whether this solution actually solves the user pain points in the first place. And yeah, basically then you move on to building the product itself.
Okay.
Yep.
What about you, Leo? Yep.
Yeah, so I agree with Rachel. Just to sum up, maybe in a few words, so it's the first phase where we empathize, meet our users, either read some data that the company already has or gather data, whether qualitative or quantitative. So really finding the problem and getting close to the user, sometimes even observing their life a little, just being a creep in their life and empathizing with them. After that, yeah, we just define which problem do we really want to solve, and which where can we bring the most value at this point. We don't, I don't know, we don't want to solve their problem, their hard problem or their relationship, right? So which problem are we gonna solve depending on the product. After that, we do some tests, some ideation. That's where the like the typical most creative part comes in. Creative in the sense what most people think is creative, like ideation, doing prototype, and after that testing, and then all over again to ideation, prototyping, etc. So empathizing, defining the issue, the problem, ideate, prototyping, and testing. Yes.
Okay. So, I mean, like looking from it, actually, you guys do actually have a process that you guys actually work on,
Yes,
doing your user
mostly.
research and all of that, right? So what are some of the important things that you would consider when it comes to that? Like, probably at this stage, or, is that like a few key things that you guys keep on mind when you guys are designing this solution, or, even thinking about this whole journey of to the end goal itself? What would you say some of the key things that is always on top of your mind when it comes to designing it? Rachel, maybe you want to go first.
Okay.
Yeah, sure. I guess the process is to add on to what you just said, right? So I think the process is there's a typical process where Leo has summed up pretty nicely, where you empathize, and then you test it at the end of the stage. But it also depends on what part of the product that what stage of the product is in, right? Sometimes we kind of pick and choose, like imagine like a menu that's appetizer and dessert at the end, right? But we don't just have to go from step one to the end. So yes, the process is there where we can use as a guidance, but it kind of depends. Sometimes you might not even need the empathy phase if, for example, you are already very sure that someone has already done the research and you're presented with a problem, then that's where you actually jump into it, right? And in terms of like what are the things that we want to watch out for when you design a product is, from my perspective as a designer, it's more like make sure you're not overthinking, right? We tend to overthink some of the solutions sometimes, and we tend to assume some of the problems because we are in our own shoes, where we tend to think that this is the frustration that the users will face, and we somehow overlook some of the things because we are so used to, as a designer, sometimes we're used to some solutions. And actually, maybe if you take a step back and talk to the users who are actually using the product, just take a little step back and watch out again, and you'll realize actually what the users are facing, the problem that or any frustrations or pain points is actually something that you may have never thought of. And the problems that you think the design is solving might not be the answer sometimes. So a little reminder, just to like, every time you've done solutioning something, then we would just go back and check and validate again, basically, to make sure, okay, this is covered. And to make sure also in terms of the solutioning, where you're not designing a complicated solution, whereby sometimes the user journey is just confusing people, and you don't want to do that. So I feel like that's one of the key things that I will try to watch out for when I design something.
Okay.
Yes. So yeah, I totally agree with you, Rachel. So I'm just gonna add something to it, and then another point that's quite important to mention, I think. So I read this book recently. It's called Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman, and this book sort of changed my life and my perception on life. It's about cognitive bias that every human has, and I think I became a better designer after reading that book. And so I try to, at any time of the process, just be careful and mind my personal cognitive bias. Try not to make one or two instances something statistically significant, for example. And the most interesting part of this book, and it says that the brain doesn't process things that don't align together, and will connect dots automatically to make up a story that makes sense and that will back up whatever you're trying to prove. Okay. And so sometimes it's okay to not know, and knowing that you don't know a certain area is very important to define, and knowing what you know and knowing what you don't know. So that's totally fine. So trying to keep all the cognitive bias in your mind at all time and verifying, try to be just more objective overall. Because when you're meeting users, some of them are super passionate, and I'm full of empathy, and sometimes I get emotional, and I feel like my will to solve their specific problem it's just it's not in the right proportion. So keeping these cognitive bias, first thing, and second thing, of course, just keeping the goals in mind, the goals that we decided initially, with KPIs, etc., throughout the process.
Okay. So if that's the case, right? Like, you mentioned, I think you guys, both of you mentioned a lot about, like, focusing on the users and, what is the user behavior like, going back to make sure that, showing empathy to the users and all. So when it comes to that, right, you guys, I'm sure you guys do a lot of user research and, to assess the demands of your product, and also I think the needs for your product and how does it match to the business goal. So do you guys mind elaborating a little bit more on how you guys actually perform the user research? And when you do it, how do you actually separate the feedback from all the noises that you have? What do you actually know that this feedback is actually is addressing the problem you're trying to solve? Rachel, would you want to take this question?
Yeah, sure. I think from the user research work that I do at Fave, or also my other client projects out there, it's less extensive compared to a real like UX full-on UX researcher, right? So I'll just be speaking from my perspective based on the work I've done. And basically, in terms of research, the usual defaults that I would be doing is, for example, if I'm trying to understand the problem, then I would go to basically user empathy sessions, right? And the empathy session is basically whereby I try to understand the pain points that they're trying to that they face, and not jumping into the conclusions right away first, because we like how Leo said that, you know, go back to the goal, what you're trying to do. So if I want to understand what's the problem, which means that I cannot assume what's the problem, right? And which means I got to ask them from step one, like, okay, how do you feel using the product? How do you navigate throughout any blockers that you're facing, things like that. And that's one of the research methods that I would use if I'm not very sure what I'm trying to solve, or I need to just validate whether this is the right problem. And that's one. And the second type of research that I do is basically, let's say I have already designed a solution that I think it's good, right? And I want to test it out. And that's when I schedule a few interviews remotely in this pandemic time with real users, right? I will just pick a few users whereby, for example, these users are relevant to the problem that I'm trying to solve. And I would usually go with 5 people, right? So once I pick them, I will just talk to them and basically set up some user tasks for them to go through. And also depends whether, you know, that problem that I'm trying to solve involves user tasks. If not user tasks, then maybe it's just a landing page that it does it convert in the first place. So that would be basically assessing the user's behavior through heat map, or simply asking questions like, okay, which one appeals to you more? Do you understand the messaging? Things like that. So this is when I already have a solution designed ready for testing, right? That's the second part, which is validating the design solution. And other than that, the rest would be just like maybe just a survey or some basic questions that I'll ask the users. So it's pretty straightforward, right? Sometimes if I just want to test a prototype, I'll just pass the phone to the user if I'm asking them face to face, or I'll just pass to some random people on the street and just ask them, try buying something from this app, and I'm just gonna observe them. And usually I'll have the screen recorded at the same time, so I can always look back and, you know, we have documented the entire process. So that's one of the things that I actually do.
That's very interesting. Like, you know, I mean, asking someone just to try out the app and all. Yeah. Would you agree with that, Leo, or do you think there's a different method of approaching this, or do you do it
No,
differently?
it's good. It's actually a lot of fun. So it's called guerrilla testing, and it's pretty cool. So I did that once in Philippines when I was working for ING on the first digital bank of Philippines. It was a very cool project because so I was based on, as always, at the client's headquarters. And yeah, there are a lot of big challenges to solve in terms of banking in Philippines, and so I really like this project. Anyways, so there was a product owner who wrote a copy explaining interest rates, the interest rate policy, and just nobody could really understand. And so I came up with a new copy, and the product team preferred my copy. And yeah, but she still didn't want to change it. She felt like it was better. And so me and another product designer, we went in the streets of Philippines, and for some reason Filipinos, they love to answer strangers in the street. Like, you know, there are some people, they see you were asking something, they say, no, I don't have time, I don't have time. But this time
that would be Malaysians.
we actually got a good yeah. I mean, I'm also guilty of it. I'm not gonna lie when I don't have time. But in this area, particularly in BGC in Philippines, it worked very well. And yes, we just asked randomly, just sometimes showing the first first copy first, and then sometimes just so that it's randomized, right? And just asking what did they understand from the copy, and if they understood it correctly, it's good or not, etc. So we did that once. But what I also like to do, I love doing that, is a design thinking workshop with my clients. So I would take about 6 people, usually the whole product team, but the more the merrier. if some stakeholders or the C-levels can come, it's also good. Marketing people, because it's good to have people that from different teams, so that we really align on the same purpose and can bring each team's expertise into the design thinking workshop. And usually it lasts either 1 day or 2 days. 1 day is quite a rush, but sometimes 2 days also can. And what I do is I'll gather some data that I collected from my client, the data that they already have. For example, I did that for Ringgit Plus. I've been working with them a lot lately. By the way, Carmen was I worked directly with Carmen, who was the guest panel of the previous product product talk of yeah. Anyways, yeah. If Carmen, you're here, you rock. Anyways, so just saying. So gathering some data from Ringgit Plus in that case, explaining it, and so everyone is on the same page, doing a landscape analysis, competitor analysis that I show at this time, creating personas together, solving their pain points, and I will have interviewed users before that, and so I will have shown all my findings of that user, of these user interviews, and identify all their pain points, find solutions together, brainstorming on as many solutions as we want to solve their pain points. And it's just a massive storm of ideas all together. Usually people are super excited because it's not on the computer and we play with sticky notes. It's super interactive. I really love these sessions. And in the end, we'll have personas, some user flows already with features. We will have an affinity diagram before that. Yeah, so a few techniques. And most of the time I do about the same techniques for each client, but I may have picked another one or slightly tweak it depending on the task or the product. Yes. And obviously everything that Rachel mentioned during the entire process, but design thinking workshop for me is a really cool one for user research.
Okay, it sounds like there's a lot of collective decision to be made when it comes to maybe finalizing the flow and coming to a conclusion as to what should be the best decision to move forward, right? So at the end of the day, how does it get decided that okay, this is probably the best to go ahead with, and then by the time when it's launched, and how do you actually measure or evaluate the product design, whether it is a successful one, or do you have to make any tweaks to it? What are some of the key performance metrics to look at, or is it just more like qualitative, like maybe there are some comments on Facebook saying that, hey, I don't know what's this button doing here? How do you guys actually get that kind of feedback and to make the design tweaks from there? Rachel, would you want to take this?
Yeah, sure. So if you're saying that, let's say after a research session, and you want to like basically pick which problem that you want to go with post research to start with, right? There are a lot of methods that you could actually take, but one of the more common ones is basically working backwards, meaning maybe I'm not sure if you guys have heard of the impact effort matrix. So basically just assessing like, okay, there are 10 problems to solve, but let's pick the one that is least effort and most impact. And once you pick one, just stick with it to the end, right? And basically when we decide on one of the problems to solve, or one of the things that we want to go forward with, taking from there, it means that once we have designed a solution for it and launch it, then in terms of metrics, usually we do both quantitative and qualitative metrics. So quantitative meaning the usual, like it depends, right, on the goal as well. So if the goal is engagement, then you might want to check with the audience retention. You want to check with the session length of the app use or the website use. You want to check with click-through rates, conversion rates, things like that. Those are like the typical metrics that we try to track. And actually, in terms of qualitative metrics, one of the simplest way is just to ask the people who are using it for some time. because usually we could actually track their usage on the app. If they are high, if the user who uses a lot post the design launch, then you could probably talk to them a bit and understand more, like, hey, how do you find a new design, or how do you find this product right now, and compare it with probably users who are have been using the app for a longer time previously, which has high engagement but dropped after the design has been launched. So you could actually gather a few different types of users who are currently using the app or who are not active anymore, and basically try to just talk to them and understand, and filtering out basically, as a product designer, we gotta know how to filter out. And if you're not sure, ask a few more people until you are confident enough that you see a pattern. There will always be an answer in the users users responses basically, and by observing their behavior, you're gonna get some insights from there. So I would say that in terms of qualitative metrics, yes, you can ask the users directly by setting up a proper user interview session, basically asking open-ended questions. Don't ask questions that lead to yes or no. Do you like the app? Yes, but they won't tell you more than that, right? So try to ask, like, how do you feel, or something that makes them dig deeper. It's like talking to imagine you're a psychologist and you're trying to understand the person, right? So another way is basically to check if it's an app, you can check App Store reviews, reviews from the users from different platforms sometimes. So it kind of depends. Yeah.
Okay. Leo, your thoughts?
Yeah, you were super comprehensive, and I don't have much to add to it because yeah, just really good. I personally am not the person to decide on the KPIs and the metrics. Usually it will be the product manager or head of product. So I'm aligned to these, but I don't create these directly. Just two things that I like doing that I feel like we should do more when gathering feedback, at least, or to measure success. First of all, is to talk to the customer support, as in the people, the help center, the people who are in touch with if the I mean, you know what I mean, people you call
the
when you have an
frontliners.
issue with the yes, exactly, because we don't talk to them enough. I find it's not a common thing, while in fact they are directly the one who understand all the bugs of the app or all the issues. So first thing, I think that should be done more. And then one thing that I love doing that I found very useful recently is, even though, so when I interview users or do usability test on a concept, even though it's a qualitative data, and numbers doesn't really matter here because it's not statistically different, I like to ask them to rate an aspect of the interface from 1 to 5, because sometimes I can ask them, do you find that it's easy to navigate through this app? And they will say yes, yeah, pretty much. And you don't know how much of a yes or no it is. So after that, if I ask them from 1 to 5, instead they will tell me 4, and I have that opportunity to ask them, okay, 4,
why?
So what should we do to reach that 5 according to you, or why is it 3? You understand? So that just make them think more and give me an answer. And some people, especially in Malaysia, I found they don't want to give bad feedback sometimes. I try to create as much of a safe place as possible, but so making them rate, give that rating, it's easier to just for them to open up.
Okay. So yeah, I think that sums up pretty well, right? So I think you guys are more of like agreeing that it's a lot on the users, and it's a lot about understanding how it works, and make them feel the product and see how it works. So I think that brings us to the next question, right? I think we get a lot of, when it comes to product designing, right, we often hear the term user experience, which is UX, and also user interface, which is UI, and they are more often being used together, like UI UX. So I think that the question that I wanted to ask is more on in terms of that, can you guys elaborate a bit more on how UI design and UX design actually related, and maybe in your current role itself, do you guys cover both, or do you guys just focus on one, or what are your thoughts on these two different terms altogether? So Leo, maybe you want to share your thoughts on this? Yeah.
Yes. So UI is part of UX. UX is many different things, but the user interface, so the look of the interface, the colors, the shapes, the feeling, look and feel of the interface, like on a visual point of view, is part of the user experience. And so there's actually some people who say that UI UX designer is not a role, or it's not correct to say, because you're not UI or UX. If you're already a UX designer, then you might do UI. You know what I mean? So UI is part of UX.
UI is part of UX. Okay.
Yes.
What about you, Rachel? do you think
I totally agree with Leo, because I feel like it's something that you cannot neglect. They go hand in hand. It's basically like you cannot design a beautiful book without a proper content, vice versa. So you gotta know both things. I feel, yeah, that's something that you cannot just pick and choose and go with one of it. It doesn't make sense.
Okay. So in your current, I think this is one of the questions that I saw in the chat. In your current like company, or the companies that you have worked with, do they actually segregate these two different roles? And do you think it is important for them to, completely have a different distinction between these two roles? Or I mean, obviously it's better if someone like, I think Rachel probably cover both in her role currently. So what do you guys think about having a combined role, and what is the drawbacks on that?
So I worked for a client in Singapore, actually UOB, and they had UI designers and UX designers, and I actually found that yes, it was a slightly frustrating for me, because I couldn't ignore one or the other. Okay, but I do think that it's not the norm. Usually people will be UI UX designer, or just user researcher, or product designer if you do a bit of everything. But I think also now in big tech companies, they will call not UI designers but visual designers, or just interface designers, something like that. They will never say UI designer actually, and there will be UX designers on the side. And I don't know exactly what their role would be, but I suppose that the visual designers will create a design system. A design system is like style guides, but for interfaces and more comprehensive. And the UX designer will just, I suppose, do some research. And yeah, for me, it doesn't work that well, or I'm not comfortable with it, but some people do it. Rachel?
Okay.
I've never worked with a person who just does one, actually. I've always been taught or told that, if you want to level up as a product designer, right, you should be able to handle or understand or be good at the end-to-end process of building a great product. And you cannot just be good at UI and ignoring, let's say, product knowledge, or a little bit of strategy, a little bit of copy. You cannot just ignore everything. So it doesn't work that way, right? What you can do is basically try to understand the end-to-end process of things. That's what I would feel. So it's the drawbacks of not knowing the entire process would be, I feel like the end product would be a little bit lacking, because there was less thought put into the end-to-end process. So I think a strong product designer should be proficient in understanding, the entire user journey, from empathy based on how a user actually touches point with the product, whether it's offline or online. You should be able to know that, and you should be able to understand the user's motivations behind using the product. That's when you actually could design a better UI or a better UX for the person. So yeah, they should be together, I feel like.
Okay.
It's a marriage, you cannot just separate them.
Yeah, I think it's true that, you know, if you wanted to build a product from end to end, you know, you should have, I mean, even though you're probably not in charge of the main KPIs, like what Leo mentioned earlier, like I'm not, I know the end goal is the what business is in charge of. I'm probably only looking at the user journey, but it should be, you know, as a, looking at it as a whole instead of, you know, dividing it into different aspects of things. So I think to that, right, in your, I mean, in your current structure and in your team, you know, what backgrounds or, you know, what skills do you think a UX or a UI, I mean, UX and UI, you know, because it's two different things, right? So like, you know, what skills and background do you think they should actually possess to be able to do a great job, or, you know, to be able to learn on the job? Maybe Rachel, maybe you can go
Yeah.
with UX first and then UI, for example.
Do you mean by like separating the roles?
Yeah,
Based on
like
the
the skills
backgrounds, or?
they should have, you know, because now that I understand, I think the task that they're being assigned is actually quite different in that sense. But, you know, maybe share with us like what are some of the similarities and also the differences when it comes to the skills and the background that is required in the job itself.
I guess I will be sharing from a perspective of a, you know, a full-fledged product designer, right? So, for example, people on a product design team at my company here is basically the bare minimum that you should have is a strong design sense, right? Because you're gonna be designing visual interfaces, like you're a designer, so you're gonna be good at that. And actually, you don't have to be like the best designer, but you also need to have the skill where you are empathetic, right? By empathetic meaning, you don't design based on what you like, because that's a very personal thing. So I feel like you gotta at least think from the user's point of view and design something that is for the user, not for yourself. So empathy, visual skills, and the rest, I think you could just learn on the job or by, you know, just taking courses, stuff like that. So those are things that can be learned, but I think the most important thing is visual skills and empathy. How about you, Leo?
Yes, definitely. I would add being curious. You have to be curious everywhere in life for every job, but you cannot afford to be curious in only one in one field. I would assume if you do a technical job, maybe you can just be really focused and learn on the specific thing. But in my job, I constantly have to learn about so the business of my clients first of all, but also I have to observe people, how do they interact with products, what are the new trends in the market. But even so recently, as I told you, I've been working with Ringgit Plus, and I didn't know anything about credit score. Some of you
Oh.
might not know. Actually, I realized that by interviewing many users, many didn't know that there was such thing as a credit score, and it affects your life and credits you can get later. So little information. So that and I learned so much about it. It was super interesting. Working with a team of researchers at Cambridge who are developing a new search engine with artificial intelligence and algorithm they're working on. This is completely new to me, and you have to like that. I might not like learning new things, but you have to be someone who is just willing to find an interest in pretty much anything. So very interesting, very important. Yes.
Okay, I guess, well, when it comes to knowledge and all, I think that learning and being interested and passionate about it is the key. You know, there's no other way to go about it, right? So I think there's also a lot of people who, I think, because like product is sort of a, I would say it's a new thing when it comes to probably a new role like UI or UX. Is probably just in recent years that we started hearing a lot about the terms itself, right? So if what would you advise in some, I mean, what advice would you give to someone who wants to transition into a product design role? Maybe you can share a little bit more on, you know, how you guys actually transition into the role, and, you know, if you really wanted to kickstart, where do I actually start? Do I start by reading more books, attending courses, or is that something that they could do to help them transition into the role?
Okay, I think I'm gonna take that one
Leo? Yep.
because yes, I feel like taking that one because I typically I mentor a lot of people myself. So on ADP list recently, I registered. Also people reaching out to me on LinkedIn, but the most is with NTU. So I have I'm a teacher in this 6 months plus course, and in there are many people who are transitioning there because they were, I don't know, retrenched, or they just want to shift career, and there's a lot of demand at the moment in what I do. And so the way I teach them is I show a lot of examples of personal work, and instead of giving a lot of theory during my class, and on the side I give references that they can study, just watch videos and read articles. So definitely you have to do that as any job, but I would say find a good mentor who you can ask questions to. I myself, in my transition of product design consultant, I couldn't find any role model, especially a woman who was more into long-term contracts and who was close to their clients. Instead of, I knew a lot of digital nomads, freelancers, typical like one-time gigs, but just so I found a really good mentor there a year ago. So yeah, just find someone you can talk to. adplist.org is a good place. Then I would tell you, try to find a course online. I have a good, so I did one of them by IDF, Interaction Design Foundation. I found that it was good. There's one class that some of my students already took. It's called UX Designer from Scratch. So this one is already comprehensive, definitely a lot of design thinking and stuff. And in terms of visual design, honestly, so I see some of my students are really struggling. I give them a lot of assignments also. Some of them are struggling, and I always tell them, why don't you just take a UI kit or a pre-design, settled design system on a Figma library. So Figma is the software that I use to design interfaces. And you can directly download libraries from there with colors, with shapes, with some components already designed. And the only thing that you need to do is simply change the colors, change some shapes, some shadows, just change a little bit, and you end up with an entire system. You can build pretty much any interface with this. So that's a good way to start, just exploring and do some cool stuff. Just reading, obviously, and seeing how other products do. That's super important. I see all my students, when they do something, I ask them, but did you actually see how others people do it? That's not how you do. If you look at on any app, the buttons cannot be so small like this on a corner. That's not how it works. Just open your phone and look at what you have. So it's actually okay to copy a little bit. Not copy exactly, but just these products are alive. They already did so much research, and they have data that backs up their decision. So why spending time exploring these basics in UX design? You can just look at it and copy. It's likely that there will be already good UX practice. So definitely, yeah, that's what you should do.
Okay, Rachel, you want to share your thoughts?
Yeah, I think my approach is slightly different from Leo's, because the way I started is kind of like I'm the kind who just rush into something and start, and then I'll just think about what happens later, right? I'll just apply a job and I'll think about how do I get a job later. So I kind of tend to think, prepare less, and I just jump right into it and figure it out later. If it doesn't work, then I will just figure out, okay, how do I improve from there? Like the failure that I didn't get the job, or I failed the interview, stuff like that. So I did not take the course because back then I was broke, right? And I just like wasn't prepared to just take a course. So what I did was actually exactly like what Leo said. Basically, look at your phone, right? Everyone has a favorite app. And whether it's Airbnb, whether it's Instagram, whether it's Telegram, right? It's these three are like really good products. And I was just basically being curious, which ties back to the first thing that you have to have, right? And I'll just like think to myself before I actually started doing anything, I'll just think like, why is the button here? Why is the interaction like that? Why is this here not there? Why is there like a circle around the Instagram story? You know, these are like tiny details. Like every pixel they lay on the screen has a reason behind it. So what I did to myself was just thinking to myself like, why? And what happened was after that I just opened Figma. Back then I was using Adobe XD, right? But the software is just a tool for you to start, so it doesn't matter where do you start. But a good place is Figma, and you can either that you could actually just pull a UI kit, or back then I didn't know there was such thing. So I basically started drawing shapes, experimenting, and I would imagine a problem to myself like, okay, how do I redesign something, or how do I solve a problem that I'm facing? So back then I just went for a question that Google interviews product designers, which is actually how my for example, this is an actual question that they asked in a product design interview. So I thought to myself, okay, since you asked this in an interview, that might be something that I could start with because it's legit, right? So I took the question, and of course, I did reference some of the answers that we have online, but I tried to just look at a few because I had zero idea where to start. So when I had those references, I told myself, don't copy all of it, but try and do something on your own, and use that just as a brief idea that don't let it influence my design decision. So I went back to the paper and basically, okay, now I'm presented with a problem on how teachers can remember faces in a classroom of 30 people. Like, how does a teacher remember which student sits where, so that it's easier for him to interact with the students and feel closer to them during the class? So that was the problem that I was presented. And I kind of just set a deadline to myself whereby, okay, I gotta finish this in 2 days. And with zero idea what am I gonna do, I'm just like, okay, let's just try and draw some stuff, map out the user journey, and just do things that may be wrong. Sometimes there is no we just keep doing wrong processes sometimes, but what matters is if the more you do something, the better you get at it, right? And it's I feel like it's more helpful than reading a book, by reading or taking a course, but that's just because I'm impatient. So if you are really like nervous and you don't know where to start, take a course, but don't just spend time taking courses, because that sometimes becomes a procrastination. Once you take a course, do the assignment, do something, learn and then do, learn and then do. So for me, it was just purely doing, and then finding out, oh, okay, so that was a theory behind that. And then that was how I understand some UX stuff. But regardless of how you approach your learning process, do not forget the doing part. And basically, yeah, once I have a case study ready based on the problem. So in design terms, we actually call that thing like a case study, where you try to solve a problem with design process, meaning sketching wireframes, coming up with solutions, and maybe presenting the ideas in a prototype, and sharing just basically your entire design process of this problem, right? And I basically took the case study. That was after I quit my job. So I took the case study and I went applying for jobs. Yes, it was like a bold move. But when the people called me, I was like, I have zero experience, and this is the only portfolio I have to show. So they were like, okay. So I said, I don't mind an internship. If you want pro bono work, I can try as well, because I was really like trying to find something to start with back then, because the end goal is to get a job, because on the job I learn more, because you won't be learning more if you are having like ideas in your head and you're not doing some real things. So I was lucky enough to actually fail a few interviews. And in every failed interview, I kind of asked the recruiter at the end of every session, like, how can I do better? What do you think is lacking, right? Regardless whether you hire me or not, I just want to know why. Like, that's part of the user validation stage, I guess, if you treat it as a design process. And basically, yeah, they will tell me, oh, you are weak in this or that. And I feel like you're good at this or that. So that's how I identify my strengths. And just, yeah, that was how it began.
Okay. I think, yeah, I think
Great.
That was a very good summary. So I guess the advice is really just to try, and then learn it on yourself. Look at, be curious, and try to observe other things and all. So yeah, I think that's what landed you at this position now. So okay, I think we are right now. I think I'll pass it on to I think I've done with all the questions that we have. So now we'll take the questions from the group chat, and I will hand it over to Lisa. Lisa, over to you.
Okay, hello. So actually, Alicia asked a lot of the questions that were in the chat already about, advice for people, going into product design. How do you do user interviews? I think Leo talked about that. And also the split between UI, UX roles. I think we talked a little bit about that as well.
Yeah.
I did, I think, let's move on to the lightning round of questions, shall we? Okay, so just to recap on how this works, this is just a fun round of questions that we, as the committee, prepared beforehand. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna ask you a question, which you both have to answer at the same time by writing it down on the piece of paper that you have prepared, and then lifting it up to the screen for everybody to see at the same time. So, and then if we can do a tiny little, just a short commentary, if your answers are different or the same or, unexpected, then we'll do that. If not, we'll just move on. Okay? Yeah? Okay, you got your pen and your paper ready?
Yep.
Great. Okay.
Yep.
So let's go with something that is a little bit like fundamental and philosophical at the same time. If you had to choose just one thing for your product to invest in today, would it be UI or UX? If you had to choose, you really had to. You ready? 3, 2, 1, go.
Of course.
UX. Okay, that's not entirely unexpected since both of you kind of agreed during the talk that UI was a part of UX, and you have to have a bit of minimal UX in place, right, before you even think about the UI. Okay, fair. Second question. Okay, which in your view is harder in product design, UI or UX? Is it going to be the same thing again? Okay, 3, 2, 1, go.
Of course.
Sorry.
It's just UX.
UX again. Okay. Got it.
Yes.
Okay.
It's just more comprehensive. So yeah. UI is part of UX, as we said. Yeah.
Okay. So the third question. Okay. So, and this is related to the product that you are actually working on today. If you had an unlimited amount of resources to play with, unlimited, right? Write down the one feature that you would introduce for your product. Something that, you always wanted, but either, too expensive, too much resources, would take too long. What is that magic feature that, if you could wish it into existence tomorrow, what would it be? Okay, I'll give a little bit more time to think about this. Maybe like 5 seconds. Okay.
I need to write in reverse. Because
yeah, I noticed that your it's mirroring, isn't it, your camera?
Yeah, so don't mind my ugly handwriting. I'm actually writing in reverse.
Okay.
That's another challenge.
You guys okay with your answers? Okay. I'm gonna count down. I'm gonna count down. Okay, 3, 2, 1, go. Map search at Fave. Okay, I don't know what Leo wrote down. It's like in Greek. What was that, Leo?
I wrote a web interface at Ringgit Plus because right now everything is done on a WhatsApp chatbot. It's pretty good to apply to
Okay.
products, but I feel like it would be nice to have a really good web app for
Okay,
this instead.
yeah, makes sense. What about you, Rachel? Can you elaborate a little bit more what you mean?
So basically, I drew like a basic where's my map? Oh, yeah. So like a basic interface here, right? Basically, if you launch Fave, you will be able to see like the list of basically it's a map, right? And
Yeah.
you can see all the deals around you, and basically you could just straight
Okay.
away explore based on your radius. Yeah, it's a
Nice.
more visual experience.
That would be nice, yes.
Okay.
Especially if
Great.
you're in a mall. If you're in a
Mm.
mall and looking for everything around you, that would be nice.
Mm. Okay, nice ones. Okay, feature request for the future, which we can look forward to for both Ringgit Plus and Fave. Okay, so the final question that we have for you is, okay, so if you were faced with two choices, okay, on the one hand, you can release an incomplete feature that doesn't have very intuitive UX, okay, that might irritate the user, and you can release it quickly to the market, or would you prefer to wait a little while and upgrade the feature and release it all at one go? So choice one is like more iterative, quickly release it and then improve it over time. Or the second one is let's improve it and then release it at one go. So if you had to make that choice, would it be the first or the second? 3, 2, 1, go. Incomplete, minimum lovable product. Ah, okay.
Oh, different.
Finally, we get a different answer. Okay, so maybe let's elaborate a little. Who wants to go first? Leo?
Actually, I meant MVP, so minimum viable product when I meant incomplete. I just think it's best to, it's just we're saving time, money, and effort if we already launch something that is more or less okay. We're not sure of everything, but at least we can learn from how our users are loving it or not, or interacting with it before really going deeper and investing in features that they might not like it, that is not necessary. So that was what I meant. And I think, yeah, that's what Rachel already also meant, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so same again.
I
Rachel,
think it's
we're on the same
basically
page.
yeah, we're just using a different term for the same answer, but I guess it's more like not feature specific, but if you were to release a feature, do it properly before you release it. Don't frustrate your users because you might not be able to retain them after you release a feature that frustrates them. So yeah, that was what I mean by a minimum lovable product. It doesn't have to be a full-fledged product, but it has to be good to use.
And yeah, I've heard that term being used as well. Oh, we have some last minute questions. Suddenly people are very talkative in the chat. So let's go back and just take one or two questions, okay, before we before we wrap up. So there's a question on learning. What kind of learning would you recommend for product managers who want to understand more about product design? Is it like a portal
Ideas, maybe?
or a book?
I don't know. You could start by reading a bit of some things on IDEO, because it's a lot about design, design thinking, etc. So IDEO is IDEO. You could yeah, I don't have especially I only have super like deep type of content.
Okay, that's fair enough.
Sorry, Rachel.
I think we want to understand more about product design, but no details. Yeah, if you don't want to go into details, there are a few books, I guess, on like how people build good products, but I don't remember the specific title right now. I think one is called Don't Make Me Think by Steve something. That's a good one to start. Yeah, Steve Krug, if I pronounce his name correctly. Don't Make Me Think.
I think you could definitely watch videos of Nielsen and Norman, which is considered a benchmark in terms of design. Yes, also design thinking, etc. So Nielsen and Norman, you can watch their videos. It's very short and pretty high level overall. It's nice to watch. So that would be a good start. Yes. And they also talk about teams. It's not only like geeky type of design, you know. They talk about the dynamics within the team. Good articles as well.
Okay, okay. I'm gonna take two more questions from the chat because we're running over. So, but we'll take two.
Actually, wait, can I ask this question? I thought it was
Yeah.
really interesting. You know, like there's this question from Sweet, if I pronounce his name or her name correctly. So I mean the question is, what would you want your product owner or your product manager to do to actually make your UX and UI designer life easier? Because asking from a product manager perspective, you know, I want to know how I can actually help to, you know, to discuss with it. And along with it, I think Amelia had this question asking, you know, what do you do when it comes to if you face tension or conflicts, you know, from maybe from your PMs, you know, and how do you decide it? And, you know, when do you push back when it comes to making decisions like that?
I think I'll start first.
Sorry,
so
yeah, Rachel.
basically, what can a PO or PM do better? It's a problem that I face on a daily basis. So I'm just gonna say it. It's more like try to respect the boundaries between PM and PD. So as a product designer, our job is to design the best solution or as should I say the most user-friendly solution for the user, which means that we've already thought it through in terms of the entire design process. We already done our job to design the best experience, right? So try to not overlap your roles with that part, and your basically leave the design to us. Trust us and let us lead the design part. And in terms of validation of the solution, we will be the one doing it as well. And it's a partnership, it's a collaboration, not a hierarchy. So yeah, I think I would say it's an equal thing. So we need you, you need me, you need us as well.
Yes, I agree. Thank God I have had really good overall. I mean, of all the product owners and managers I've worked with, I mostly have good experiences. But it is true that that happened. That there was a few times where just I can give any reasoning, all the research we did, everything, and still because it doesn't feel good to that person. And it's not only product people, I'm talking about anyone in the company. Still, because one person or one C-level doesn't like it or doesn't feel personally that it's working, then the entire voice of sometimes hundreds of users, it just goes to trash. So that is something personally I cannot deal with, and this is just difficult. I cannot. So that's one thing, but most of the time it's okay. Just we respect each other's job and then we do things well on each time. But that's for every team, I guess. But then another thing I find that you could improve overall is make us get in touch with other teams as well. Don't be only the person, the link between the developers and then coming back to us and then marketing and then coming back. I would love sometimes to just talk to the developers and find solutions that work together, or talk to the marketing team instead of having directly the marketing team saying, we want more ads. How do I put more ads? Where do I put these ads, etc., etc. When I find that as having ads there doesn't work, it's not a good idea. We could put it somewhere else. I would rather myself talk to the marketing team directly, talking about design with the marketing team, talking about design with the development team, talking about design with the business team. But if there's this product manager in between, it's just it reduced the communication. So once in a while, just having bigger meetings or just giving the contact of someone I can talk in each team, it's something that really helps. So you can do that.
I want to add something. Sorry. So basically, I think I agree with what Leo said, right? On these like collaboration with other teams, and that also means that don't come to designers asking for a feature, asking us to build a feature and basically just build it and test it. Because oftentimes users don't use your features. Users use a product not because of the features. Users use your product because they are trying to solve something in their daily life. And if you come to me for a feature, like design something cool for the users, it might not be the best decision sometimes. So I would prefer to work with you, the PM or the PO, or whoever's asking for that feature, to find out whether this is something worth investing in the first place before we invest all our resources into it. Because otherwise you can just ask anyone to do the job for you, because our job is to actually collaborate with you and understand the problem. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank
So
you,
I think
Svit.
yeah, wait, hold on.
Svetlana.
Okay, see, let me comb through the product. Let me comb through the chat. I think there is another question that ties back to, just now you mentioned earlier a lot about on listening to the users and, trying to you're trying to solve the users problem. The users use your app because they are trying to, there's an end goal that they're trying to achieve by using the app itself. So I think there's this question from Alvin saying that, I think this is quite common, right? Probably someone from the upper management saw that there is a better feature that was being, I wouldn't say better, but maybe there's a new features that's being introduced in another competitor's platform. And then they said, how about we try on this? And then, after conducting all the user testings, the feedback is not that great. So on the features itself, do you come across any situation where you had to manage the expectation of the management based on the results that was given? And, how do you go about approaching that?
Dark mode. At some point, everyone wanted a dark mode, and at some point, everyone wanted a chatbot also. So yes, that happened. And sadly, sometimes you have to do it to prove that it wasn't working, and it's okay, it's fine. But most of the time, I try to always link the business and the business goals to what they're requesting and how will it really solve in a more holistic approach than and in the entire system of their product, the entire ecosystem. Rachel?
I get that a lot as well. As Leo said, sometimes you have no choice but to ship it, and then they find out, oh, you're right in the first place. So that happens a lot. But as product designers, we cannot control business decisions sometimes. So what we can do to actually do our part is when business says that, okay, our competitor is doing something cool and we want to have that feature on our platform as well, then what we will do is basically going back to the design process of, say, if it's a very urgent request, then, as a team, we'll come together and, okay, let's map out a very, very, very simple prototype, basically not pixel perfect, right? It's just basic UI UX stuff, and get it out and interview, like, let's say 20 people, 30 people. It kind of depends on the product. I mean, the context as well, right? And from there, we ask questions like, would you use this feature? If not, why? If yes, why? On a scale of 1 to 5, how likely are you to recommend this to your friends? These are just some examples that we would ask. And actually, during the test, the survey itself, we will batch send to a few people. We are not going to ask one by one sometimes, because we need quantity to prove that this concept works or doesn't work. And from there, we can basically, we use a tool called Maze to actually check, there are many tools out there, right, to actually check whether this is how the users are reacting to your survey. They will even calculate, like, on a scale of 100 people, how many % of them does not want this feature. Based on the heat map, how many of them actually drop off, things like that. That is clearly telling the management that, people don't want this feature at all. But sometimes they would still say, okay, I want to look at the small percentage of people, the 20 people who actually want to do the feature, and I just want to go ahead with it. Then if that's the case, then you have no choice, right? But make the best of that product, since it's not something that everyone wants, but you have no choice. Your job is to basically design the best possible and try to mitigate, try to reduce the risk of the business being hurt when the product is released, basically.
Yep.
Okay. Do we have any more questions? Wait, hold on. Lisa, Kim, do we have any more questions to?
Nope.
No, I think we basically addressed all of them. Oh, oops, forgot I need to turn my video back on. 1 second.
Group photo time, right?
Yes, it is. But even before the group photo as well, I think we'll need a Bree to start sharing screens again.
Ah,
Brianna.
Brianna.
Yes, yes,
Oh my goodness.
Give me a
Oh,
moment.
okay. So while we are doing that, Rachel, we've got a question from Jeffu. How can they get a job recommendation in Fave?
You can message me on LinkedIn, right? We can talk from there.
Oh yeah,
Private messaging on LinkedIn. So before we move on to the slides where you can get the profile speaker URLs, we'd like to get everyone's feedback, please. So if you have your phone with you, if you could just scan this QR code, you can do the survey after, but this will help direct you to the link. Oh, Speed says they are in pajamas. Understand the work from home life. No worries. Okay, so have a couple more seconds for the QR code. We really appreciate feedback to hear about what other things you'd like to hear from us in the product talk series, whether it's from an engineering perspective, a designer's perspective, a PM's perspective, or even from a product marketing perspective. So please feel free to share what you'd like to hear from us, what we can do better as well to help cater to you. Even when it comes to like the timing of the event and such. So with that, has everybody scanned? Okay, then we can move on to checking the next slide, please, Bree. Here's how you can connect with our speakers. So Rachel, you can reach her at linkedin.com/in/RachelHow. And then for Leo, you can reach her at linkedin.com/in/Leonor Cogneau. Sorry, did I pronounce that correctly?
Yes, you did. Wow.
Oh, thank God, yeah. I just realized how to pronounce
wow.
it. Yeah, okay, I'll pat myself on the back.
Impressed.
Thank you. And then for Rachel, would you like to drop your LinkedIn URL in the chat as well, just in case?
Yep.
So someone else from a product team, can you drop the bit.ly for the survey as well? I would appreciate that.
Oh, thanks, Brianna.
Yeah. I like how Bria just like, let me go back and then type the bit.ly from there.
Yep.
Okay, yes, you can access that chat. bit.ly/203cgd2. I think that's the correct one. I'm going to cross my fingers. So you can all stay updated with us through Facebook. So we are on facebook.com/womenwhocodekl. We will have updates on the different tracks we have for Women Who Code. This includes not just product, but also the engineering track, the data science track, and this is previously top secret, but we're going to unveil it to you now. We're also going to do an IT and cybersecurity track. So that's very exciting, and that'll be coming up soon in the next month or so. We are also on Meetup and PTX. And if you're going to move on to the next slide. We are also on Slack, and you can find information on this specific talk under Product Talk and Volunteers if you'd like to join us as part of our community too. We organize events like this, and we hope to eventually branch out into workshops for product, whether it's on how to become a better product manager, or to also have some UX workshops to kind of expand on the topic for today. So I think that's it, right, Bri? And we are all okay to take the group shots now?
Yes.
Okay, everybody turn your camera.
3.
Okay. Yeah, and then I'll just remove the spotlight.